Welcome to my channel. What? Wait. Picture this. It's midnight. You're standing in front of an open fridge, bathed in that cold, fluorescent light, and you're just staring, right? You're not even hungry. You're just kind of scanning the shelves. Well, welcome to a time-traveling deep dive, where we are going to uncover the shocking, ancient survival programs that are literally controlling your modern appetite. Today, we're going to completely shatter everything you thought you knew about human history. So let's dive right into this super relatable modern mystery. Why exactly do you raid the fridge at 11 p.m.? I mean, it's a completely irrational behavior. You've already had dinner, you're perfectly comfortable, that suddenly your brain starts pacing like a caged animal, absolutely demanding that you go find a snack. Well, to understand why we do this, we can't just look at modern psychology. We have to look back roughly 3 million years. Because you see, that weight might craving, it isn't a lack of willpower. It's actually a ghost from the African savannah that's still running deep inside your nervous system. Think about the sheer contrast of our reality. On one hand, you have your modern fridge, this absolute wonderland of cold soda, sweet yogurt, and leftover pizza. It's effortless access to calories. But flip back to what your deep ancestors actually considered food. And I promise you, if you were served the menu from 3 million years ago, you would be absolutely horrified. To figure out why our brains are so hardwired to hoard food, we have to face the gruesome reality of what we had to eat back then just to survive. Which brings us to our first historical era, scavengers on the savannah. Now, we usually like to picture our ancient ancestors as these proud, noble hunters, right? Standing tall with spears, taking down massive beasts in the wild. But the truth is a whole lot less glamorous. We were definitely not nature's apex predators. We were actually nature's ultimate scavengers. Let's look at the highly unappetizing Phase 1 diet. When a lion killed an antelope, the lion ate the absolute best parts first. The muscle, the liver, the heart. Then the hyenas moved in, crunching through the ribs and the skin. By the time our ancestors finally crept out of the tall grass, all that was left were the absolute scraps. I'm talking thick lead bones, cracked skulls filled with brain matter. And when all else failed, digging in the dirt for fat white larvae and termites that literally crunched in the mouth like prehistoric shrimp. Look, it sounds awful to us today, but this scrap-based menu was the very foundation of human survival. So, here's the crucial question. How on earth did we manage to survive on the leftover bones that even hyena jaws couldn't crush? Well, enter Old One tools, basically the original prehistoric nutcrackers. Now, these are just simple sharp stone flakes, but they completely changed the course of history. You see, we were the only scavengers out there that had horns capable of gripping a rock hard enough to smash open those super thick antelope thigh bones. And inside was a gray, slick, dripping treasure, bone marrow. We just scooped it out raw with our fingers. It was pure, incredibly calorie-dense fat, and it kept our fragile species alive when absolutely nothing else could. Moving on to a major biological turning point. How fire built the human brain. Scavenging kept us breathing, sure, but something else made us human. Roughly 1 million years ago, deep inside Wonderwork Cave in South Africa, our ancestors basically captured lightning in a bottle. They tamed fire. Now, 3 million years ago, we were scavenging for scraps and eating raw marrow. But 1 million years ago, the invention of fire changed our biology forever. Why? Because cooking is essentially pre-digestion. Raw meat and raw plants force your gut to do hours and hours of grueling chemical work. But drop a marrow bone in the hot embers, and the heat does the breaking down for you. Fast forward to 300,000 years ago, and thanks to the massive amounts of energy saved by cooking, our guts actually shrank, and we evolved into top-tier hunter-gatherers, eating literally anything we could catch or dig up. Cooking was the ultimate evolutionary game changer. Just think about the energy demands of your brain. It only takes up about 2% of your total body weight, but it greedily consumes 20% of your body's calories. You simply cannot run a supercomputer like the human brain on raw leaves and termites. It requires massive, constant amounts of energy. Shrinking our guts through cooking freed up the necessary calories to power this hungry machine inside our skulls. Quite literally, cooked, fat-rich food is what built your brain. Which brings us right into our next chapter, the ancient sugar survival trap. Now, keeping these massive, powerful brains running meant they started to wire us to fiercely crave the absolute most energy-dense, rare items in nature. And honestly, this leads us directly into the dietary traps we fall into today, 3 million. That is the staggering number of calories in a single mammoth. Just think about that for a second. For an ancient tribe, taking down a mammoth was like hitting the biological jackpot. One big kill fed a tribe for weeks and saved literally hundreds of hours of foraging for berries or digging for weeds. In that saved time, that became a free time early humans used to sit around the fire, teach skills, raise children, and actually develop culture. So we learned to aggressively crave massive hits of protein and fat, because hitting that calorie jackpot meant your entire tribe survived and thrive. But what about our sweet tooth? Let's compare a dripping wild honeycomb to a modern donut. The Hadza hunter-gatherer tribe in Tanzania, they still scale these incredibly dangerous trees and suffer hundreds of bee stings just to get wild honey. Why? Because absolutely nothing else in nature packs that many calories into one single bite. Now, here is the funny and frankly kind of frustrating part. Your body literally cannot tell the difference between wild honey in a tree and a glazed donut from a drive-thru. It just senses a massive spike in sugar and immediately thinks, fantastic, we are storing fat for the next famine. Modern food companies know this perfectly well, which is why almost every packaged food on Earth is really just sugar wearing a different costume, hijacking that ancient survival instinct. Let's take a quick detour into a much darker chapter, dark rituals and human bones. Yeah, we need to talk about some of the more bizarre cleavings discovered deep inside Gough's Cave in England, dating back roughly 14,700 years. Researchers found that the skulls of early humans had been meticulously cleaned with stone tools. The fascias were carefully removed, and the tops were shaped rim by rim into drinking cups. And the long arm and leg bones of these humans, they'd been cracked open to extract the marrow exactly the same way our ancestors cracked open analog bones millions of years prior. So yes, early humans were eating each other and crafting these macabre drinking vessels out of human skulls. Now, you might assume, oh, well, they must have been starving to death, right? But let's look at the cold, hard calorie counts. A human provides about 125,000 calories. A bison provides 600,000, and a mammoth, 3 million. Simply put, humans were incredibly inefficient food. Plus, the archaeological evidence shows Gough's Cave was actually full of horse and deer remains. There was plenty of animal meat around. Furthermore, the human bones had deliberate zigzag patterns carved into them after the meat was gone. So this proves this wasn't an act of desperate starvation. It was a deliberate, complex, and incredibly dark ritual. Moving from that into another wild survival tactic, rotten meat to modern cheese. Okay, from cannibalism, let's transition to a wildly unappetizing but essential survival tactic, our ancient, acquired taste for decayed flesh. Just follow these ancient food preservation steps with me for a second. Step 1, kill an animal. Step 2, well, you don't have a freezer and you can't eat it all at once, so you bury it in a cold stream or stash it in a cave. Step 3, wait a few weeks for the maggots to arrive and the sheer stench of decay to set in. Step 4, eat the rotting meat. Anyway, I know it sounds completely disgusting to us, but researchers believe early humans actually preferred this way. Rotting meat has already been broken down by bacteria, which makes it much easier to chew and absorb. And conveniently, that bacteria naturally produces essential B vitamins that your body desperately needs to function. And honestly, here is the ultimate punchline. Think about what we consider modern controlled rot. Artisanal cheese, yogurt, sourdough bread, beer, and wine. Basically, every single fancy fermented food you'd love to put on a modern charcuterie board is really just rot, slowed down and made safe. So your refined, sophisticated taste for artisanal cheese wasn't born in some beautiful French dairy. It was actually born on the African savanna 100,000 years ago from our ancestors eating rotting, maggot-covered meat. Kind of put your next wine and cheese night into perspective, doesn't it? All right, let's bring it all together. Cavemen in your modern kitchen. Let's bring this evolutionary exploration full circle and see exactly why our ancient hardware is completely mismatched at the modern world we've built. If we took you, a modern human, and dropped you into the wild 50,000 years ago, you'd probably be dead in days. You wouldn't know which plants were toxic, you definitely couldn't run down an animal, and you for sure couldn't smash a thigh bone for marrow. You would literally starve while staring at a landscape full of food that you just couldn't see. But flip it around. If you dropped a 50,000-year-old ancient human into your modern kitchen today, they would weep with joy. They would think they had literally walked into a god's pantry. Cold, sweet drinks sealed in metal, bread perfectly baked by strangers, fruit from lands they'd never even heard of. To them, it's a magical paradise where absolutely no one has to run, hunt, or bleed just to eat. Which brings us to our final provocative fact. For 3 million years, every single human being who ever walked the face of the earth was cold, tired, and perpetually hungry. You are living in a true historical anomaly. So how does it really feel to be the very first human in 3 million years who isn't constantly starving? The next time you find yourself staring into the fridge at 11 p.m., give yourself a little grace. It's not a lack of willpower. It's just an ancient survival ghost, still scanning, still fighting, and still trying to keep you alive. Goodbye. See you in the next video.